share your presentation and then slide, and then we're going to go into it, and you're going to hear from both of us. So because Lorenzo is the aviation expert, he's going to be driving the presentation, or let's call it flying the presentation today, and we're going to be talking about aviation. So Lorenzo, I'm going to introduce you a little bit now, just now when we talk about why aviation. But as you can see, we have a beautiful picture, a beautiful slide, and Lorenzo, as you're going to hear, has got a lot of passion for this topic of aviation. So we're excited to tell you a bit more. So Lorenzo, why don't you go into the first slide, and let's get straight into it. Thank you all for listening. Just hang on a second, my lights are going out here. So the question is why aviation? So I think the first thing to say about why is I2 considered getting to the aviation market is because as I2, as most of you know by now, we are experts in specialist risks and in niche risks. And when looking at the aviation market, it certainly ticks all of those boxes. It's a niche product, it requires a lot of expertise, and it's a substantial size market. What we've seen in looking at the market in aviation is for many years it's been quite a tough, soft, and challenging market. But as you all know, around the world, there have been many challenges, such as a war in Russia and Ukraine. There's new tension in the Middle East, and lots of challenges. And we've started to see the aviation market in South Africa harden or slightly correct. So we've decided that it's a good time to get into the market. We've also seen many of the business, about half the market in South Africa is placed into Lloyd's, into binders, and we've seen many of these binders be slightly restricted. And actually what we've realized is that there's a shortage of capacity in the South African market. So I2 is here to bring some credible capacity to the market. I think some of the things that I2 brings to the aviation market, without a doubt, is the I2 brand. And for those of you that have known us and been following us on iTOOsdays for many years now, I2 has built up a strong brand and reputation for doing things like experts. In terms of aviation, one of the big opportunities we see down the line is that there's a lot of this business being written in Africa. And in I2's business model, we have business operations in about 6 countries in Africa. So certainly in Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, Mozambique, Ghana, and also into East Africa. We have people on the ground as I2, and we have licenses. So we certainly see in time Africa as an exciting opportunity to get into the aviation market in Africa. And of course, we have brokers like yourselves joining us today. We have over 900 brokers that we have agencies with. We have many hundreds of brokers joining us every iTOOsday, and that we think that we bring great distribution to this aviation market. So we're really excited. We've taken the plunge. We're in the game. And the last thing that I want to say about getting into aviation is that I2 has a very strong and core philosophy, is that whenever we get into a product line, we do it by backing an expert. And on that note, I would like to introduce you all to Lorenzo Bettini, who is I2's aviation underwriter. And Lorenzo has been working very closely with me, and he's really been the guy that has started our aviation product for us and our aviation division for us. Lorenzo, just to give you a bit of his background, he looks very young. He does have a baby face. A lot of the lady brokers love his red and rosy cheeks when he blushes. But what I will tell you about Lorenzo is he's been flying a plane since he's the age of 16. He has more than 10 years of experience as a pilot. He's got many hundreds of hours flying different planes. And that for I2, when we were considering getting into aviation, was a key consideration. Here is a person who not only understands the insurance, but he really understands flying a plane and the aviation market and what's going on out there. Lorenzo also comes to us with a number of years' experience from one of the leading aviation brokers. And Lorenzo, we're really happy to have you on board as I2. I think I've done a good enough job in selling some of your expertise, and I'm sure that many of our brokers are really excited to be hearing from you today and talking a bit more about aviation. So Lorenzo, over to you, and I'm going to jump in and join you a bit, but let's get on with some of your thoughts in aviation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Justin. I appreciate it. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first Aviation iTOOsday. Apologies if my voice does cut out. Apparently, I had to get a throat sore about 3 days ago, so I'm still trying to nurse that through. But to continue on, Justin, thank you also for talking about my experience and also the expert mention. And the same applies to I2 also. I have been with I2 for just over 4 months now. And we've been through a roller coaster with a few things that we'll discuss in our meeting itself. The presentation would lead to it. But to start off with, and this is the most important aspect for me about I2, is the purpose. I2 really relies on purpose and also wants to unlock every individual's potential. That's the thing. And together we conquer risk. So that's really what we try and do. And especially when it comes to aviation, everyone always thinks if you look at aviation, it's an aircraft flying, it's a helicopter, but there's a lot more to it. You know, aviation connects countries, it connects people, it connects families. And especially when it comes to places such as Africa and Indonesia, we have many isolated and remote countries where there's absolutely no accessibility. With a boat by foot would take you ages. So I've got a video lined up here, and this is an expert example. You'll hear us quite a lot with the word expert. But this is an expert example of how important aviation is and the powers thereof also. This is a snippet from Mission Aviation Fellowship, who operates in Africa and throughout Indonesia. And they help the more remote areas with supplies. And well, let's have the video do the discussion. So with that video, and I hope it's a good.
Sorry, everyone. It just seems Lorenzo has frozen there for a second. Let's give it a minute and see if it comes right.
Apologies for that, Just. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. I just
marketing team, can you hear us? I think we seem to have lost the connection.
Okay, fantastic.
You're back on.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Lorenzo,
Okay,
do you just want to
fantastic.
reshare your presentation?
Will do. All right. So just to pick up where we basically just left off there. Sorry for that, the network disruption there. So that video shows exactly what aviation does for these remote areas. I mean, if you have a look at where they are landing and where they are operating, it's impossible for the average person to get there or for any type of transport. And for us getting into aviation, this allows us the opportunity to ensure that these operations continue throughout these remote areas. It gives more of the peace of mind to these operators that their aircraft is covered. Majority of all their operations would also be covered. Obviously, there is a risk associated to it, but for someone to be comfortable in doing what they are doing, that's exactly why we've also gone into the aviation markets. Although with this, we've also realized that there is quite a lot of things that have come up in the market and the industry itself. So if you look at the aviation insurance capacity and referring to locally, South Africa now, majority and about an estimate of all our risks would be 50% placement in London, and the rest would be with the local insurers taking following lines. So as Justin has said, iTOO has come in to bridge that gap, act as a support market, and then also basically save the day. So we help keep our risks locally placed. And obviously with our backing that does go back to London, we normally say to ourselves, local is lacquer, so we'll keep the placements here for us. Obviously, there's a few exciting things coming into the market also now. We've seen a massive rise in hydrogen aircraft and the testing thereof, and also the electric aircraft. Now, hydrogen, they're still working on it for South Africa. And what's basically happening now is we'll probably have to go through some rigorous testing before we can have it approved. And electric aircraft on the upside, though, is we are seeing a massive increase in electric aircraft demand now with our flight schools and training organizations in South Africa. And that's obviously something that's environmentally friendly, which is also important for us, and definitely a product we would look at ensuring later down the line if we do have the supporting figures. I mean, majority of the aircraft in South Africa are reaching a certain age, they're getting more expensive. And that also leads us to the next bullet. And I'll actually have this one up also. The increased cost for repairs and the shortage of spares in South Africa makes it quite difficult for insurers and operators in our country. I mean, majority of aircraft are from 1960s upward. You do get older. And the problem with that is they do tend to, it's either corrosion or they're just basically old. The retractable landing gear is not as sturdy as it was when it rolled out of the factory. Now, if something happens on a training flight or even a private flight, we are sitting with a problem where propeller prices are going up, engine prices are going up, repairs are going up. I mean, everything in the world is going up in price. But for aviation, this is really a big factor, and especially when it comes to the shortage of spares. An example that I can use is that we have seen an occurrence where you would probably wait about 1 year to 2 years for helicopter blades just to get to South Africa because there is a shortage from North America. And Justin, I don't know if you would like to get in here from your view.
Yeah, so Lorenzo, I mean, I think you've covered most of it, but what we do see in the aviation market is there's lots of new technology. One of the trends that we certainly see is the convergence of drones and aircraft. We are seeing drones being used more and more for crop spraying and for different uses, delivering goods. So I think there's a really exciting development in drones, and iTOO is one of the leading drone insurers in this country already. And we do see this ability to work with the drone market and new technology. And at the same time, as Lorenzo mentioned, this is a dollar-based asset in most cases, a weakening rand, increased cost of repairs, and sometimes challenging getting parts makes us a really difficult market. And I think that's where it's important, as I've said earlier, to have an expert that really understands the market, as well as the backing of the iTOO brand and business. We think that we can bring something very unique to this market. And we're really excited about the potential that we have to grow this business into Africa as well.
Great. Thank you, Justin. And referring to drones, I'm sure that most of the brokers on this call are also aware of our in-house specialist drone underwriter, Kopano. So if there are any queries or any quotes you have, please send it through to Kopano. He'll be glad to help you with that. So moving on to the next one, the importance of aviation insurance. So the fact that the peace of mind, you as an aircraft owner, most probably you'll see that these guys consider their aircraft as their kids. So they have been saving up, whether it's financed or whether it's savings, traditional finance also. This aircraft is as important as children in a household. And now the thing is, if you've been saving up for your whole life just to get that dream come true and start flying, insurance is supposed to give you the peace of mind that whatever you do with your aircraft, where you go, flying or on the ground, you have the cover for when anything occurs or happens to that aircraft. And that's one of the important things, also touching on financial institutions. So majority of operators and private owners, you would understand if you look at the values of aircraft right now in the market, they are phenomenally high. So you can finance an aircraft, you can go to majority of our finance houses, the big players in the markets, and you can secure a loan or a finance agreement for your aircraft. But how aviation insurance bridges this gap to also protect these financial institutions is by means of a breach of warranty, which is it's a very vast but also a good factor on a policy. What it basically does is whether a client is in breach of any air regulations or anything happens to the aircraft that is in breach of the policy conditions, the financial institutions are still afforded cover for their share on this finance agreement. Although there would be action taken further down the line to the insured, we won't get into that now, but we as aviation insurers also try and protect our financial institutions and the people we also do business with in South Africa. Now, obviously, aviation insurance is important from a legal perspective, especially when it comes to the South African Civil Aviation Authority. In South Africa, when it comes to flying, you do have to have third-party legal liability insurance in place. It's a minimum requirement for you to have your aircraft's authority to fly issued. If you do not have your authority to fly, unfortunately, you're not going to touch the skies. So that is one part that's also on the advantage side of aviation insurance. And then also looking at third parties and the environmental damage that aircraft can do. We are talking unmanned aircraft and manned aircraft can cause massive damage to any property or third party, how can I say, crops as an example in the agricultural sector. That is where you would normally see your biggest third party claims, and obviously from the environmental side also. So aviation insurance does get in there and assist with that too. So taking this into consideration, we would like to also disclose our appetite to aviation insurance, especially when it comes to the areas we are operating in. So we are open for business, 100%. We are keen on looking at fixed wing aircraft, at rotor wing aircraft. We will look at anything, to be honest. But now the only thing comes in that we are still busy with our policy wording. So this only allows us to act as a follow or a support market. What that basically means is if ever you do have a quote or anything does come up where you only have 60% support on a risk, we would gladly look at it and try and see the best we can do to provide you with the 40% and have that fully covered. So now, as we just mentioned also with our policy wording, obviously our policy wording is of utmost importance to us. So we have been busy with that. It's been up and down to our attorneys also. We've been working on it in-house and everyone's just been doing a great effort on that. To Lee and Reese on the call also, thank you very much, Thomas, appreciate it very much. But now, to give you an idea, as soon as we have our policy wording signed off, then we can look at quoting standalone rates or lead rates. Standalone being we can look at insuring a risk 100%, and then obviously lead rates, we'll probably take majority of the risk on a policy, and then we will also do the underwriting and the claims control from there. So, referring to our geographical areas, we are a South African-based insurer, but as Justin also mentioned, we take huge pride in ourselves for the vast broker network we have in Africa. So we are starting by just focusing on South African-based business, but we are open to any business or any inquiry within Africa. To our benefit, we have a treaty that's been set up in the best way when it comes to the limits on territories. So obviously, we can also look at insuring risks domiciled outside of South Africa, dependent upon exactly where. Now, I mean, we're not going to be looking at any countries included where wars are occurring or there's political unrest. So, Justin, I would like to find out from you if you'd like to have a word here.
Thanks, Lorenzo. And just a few things from me to add to our aviation appetite right now. I think the first thing that I want to mention to all of our brokers is that we are very much open for business. So if you have aviation risks or clients or businesses you want to talk to, as you can hear, Lorenzo loves to talk. He's passionate about aviation, and we really want to start looking at and underwriting risks. We're actually trading. We've written our first few months of writing business, and so things are really getting exciting for us. We also, though, understand that part of building a sustainable market is to build a decent portfolio of business. And any good underwriter will tell you that as part of doing this, we need to build up a book slowly and a nicely balanced book. So for that reason, really, we've decided to take a follow market approach. We've seen that this approach is really working. So when we have brokers that have a risk, there's a shortage of capacity, as we've mentioned, and we're really happy to participate as a follow market. And as we build up a book and as we gain a bit of experience and we're comfortable, our risk appetite will certainly increase. And I think pretty soon you'll see us starting to take lead risks on some of the smaller risks and working more directly as a lead market. I think the other thing to say is Africa, as Lorenzo has mentioned, we very much want to start building this business in South Africa, but we have actually written 1 or 2 risks in Africa, outside of South Africa. And again, there we think that in the long term, this is a really exciting market for us. So if you are sitting somewhere in Africa, we've had a few of you from Namibia and Botswana on this call, we'd really love to start engaging and see how we can help you on aviation risks. And I think all that we want to manage expectations is that we want to go out and build a really sustainable business, and we want to be here for the long term. And that's really what we think that this aviation market needs. So in short, we're trading, we're open for business, and we'd love to hear from you. Lorenzo, over to you.
Thank you, Justin. And thank you for your words also there. So the majority of our brokers on this call, and I would actually like to see a poll on that too, how many have actually touched a aviation quote before or a policy or have been approached by these? So what we are focusing on with our presentation now is the principles of aviation insurance. So our next few slides, we're going to run through the technical aspect of aviation policies, what you can look out for, what's very important, and also most of the times what the client should consider and how the broker should sell it to the client. So to start off with, I think the best way would be the types of aircraft and finances. Our types of aircraft, there's a vast majority of aircraft operating across the world. If you take South Africa into consideration, we have training and general type of aircraft, which can be owned by private owners too and flown to. These are majority of the aircraft flying in our skies. We're sitting at roughly about 20,000 aircraft in South Africa operating between commercial and private. So now training referring to flight schools, it's older aircraft, they're going into flight schools. And the problem with this is the older an aircraft is, the more susceptible it is to damage or to a total loss. So that's why with our risk appetite, for now, we do not really want to look at flight schools. But as I previously mentioned, that we do have electric aircraft coming into South Africa, trying to cater for the training sector and the flight schools. And I mean, if we can have a look at the numbers and it just works, that's definitely something we'll look into in future. And then obviously going on to commercial and charter aircraft, we have majority of everyone have probably flown on SAFE or on Airlink and such. These aircraft operate for remuneration throughout Africa, South Africa, whether it is scheduled flights and you actually get a boarding pass, or it's non-scheduled flights and you just organize a flight with a commercial pilot. Obviously, they are on a commercial license holder too. You can fly with them anywhere, and that's what we'll regard as a charter flight. This would mainly be passengers, cargo, anything as such then in that field. And then obviously we get the legendary warbird types of aircraft. So with this and the epicness thereof, you'll see majority of the pilots watching either Maverick, Top Gun, or any aviation film, Fly Boys as an example. You would see the smile on every person's face because everyone just gets that classy type of epic feeling when you look at these aircraft. Obviously, they are on the older side too, but we actually do pride ourselves in South Africa that we have quite a few legendary warbirds operating in our country. So now moving on to airliners, majority of these ones are the cross-oceanic flights, also with passengers and cargo, and this would also include your flights to Durban, Cape Town, and other hubs as that with SAFE and any other airline operator in our country. Now, obviously, speaking of financial institutions, the question always comes up, how do I afford an aircraft? Because if you go and look at the prices of aircraft, as previously mentioned, they are quite high. Now, finance is readily available, and we do have great finance institutions in South Africa that can help you with either private financing on your aircraft or commercial financing. The reason why it's split is basically just the operations you'll be doing and what you will be conducting, the flights conducted with your aircraft, whether it's private or you're receiving flights for reward. So going on to our flight school topic from training and general type of aircraft, best would be, how do we underwrite risks? So obviously we are going to look at an aircraft's age, the specifications thereof, and the complexity. So it sounded great and awesome having a legendary warbird, and you feel so much pride within yourself. But there's also a massive risk with these aircraft. We're going back to the shortage of spares. We're going back to the cost for repairs also, which is phenomenally high and could most probably result in a total loss or a write-off. Now, if we continue on to this, our risk is also based on pilots. Who's the pilots that will be operating this aircraft? How old are they? What type of experience do they have? And then also a type rating. So each and every aircraft flying in the skies has a specific type rating because it is a type of aircraft. Now, this requires conversion to type training, which, as I implied, you can do through a flight school, but you can also do it on your private aircraft with an instructor at a flight school. So there is a difference when you look at the two risks. Obviously, us as I2, we are keen on ensuring anyone with a private aircraft. And if conversion to type does come up, we will definitely look at it. But if it's within a flight school, we might have to have some meticulous underwriting with that. If we look at the geographical limits and the countries, so majority of our aircraft do operate into Africa. And as we all are aware, we've had some unrest in Africa in the past few years now, especially if we're referring to Sudan and also to the northern region of Mozambique. So that is obviously something we have to look out for. If you do have a commercial aircraft and you're operating passengers for remuneration, we would like to know where you are flying with that aircraft. And it's also more peace of mind for the insurer and as much for the broker, knowing where the aircraft will be hangared or will be standing for weekends on times or even for months on times. So that is definitely one of the most important things. And then obviously, what would the uses be on with this aircraft? Uses can include anywhere from aerobatics, flying upside down, doing loops, barrel rolls, or just flying straight and level from here to Zambia or to Zanzibar going on your holiday. That's very important for us because obviously point number 2 and point number 4 will walk hand in hand. Now, if we look at the use and it is something such as aerobatics or crop spraying, obviously the pilot has to be rated for that and also have the relevant experience to be able to conduct those flights. So these are the 4 most important points we'll look at any quote slip that we receive or any business in Africa. And Justin, over to you if you'd like to add anything on this.
Thanks, Lorenzo. I think you've covered it all pretty well, so nothing more to add. I'm getting some great conversations on the chat group. So I have shared Lorenzio's email address, and I'll also share his cell phone number. So if you ladies, if you're looking for a date, he is engaged. But if you are interested in chatting to us about risks, you've got quite a few of you said you've got risks. I will share his contact details on the chat, so look out for that. And we'd love to hear from you and have this discussion about any types of aircrafts that you want to show us. So thanks, Lorenzo, and you can carry on. You're doing a good job.
Thank you very much, Justin. So with the way we underwrite, I think let's leave all our questions for the Q&A, then we'll quickly run through it. I'll also revert back to any slide if anyone would like to see it again. And obviously this call is also recorded, so we will share it with anyone if you would like to have it. Now, let's break down an aviation policy. So this is the most important part. And also, once again, I'm referring to the principles, the foundation of a policy. So we normally refer to a hull as the aircraft itself. If we talk anything aviation, we refer to a hull. A hull is cross-board for a helicopter or for a fixed wing, an aeroplane, basically, to put it in normal terms. Now, the hull can cover 2 types of risks. First of all, it can cover ground risk, where the aircraft is only on the ground, and some subjectivities can also be included on these words around ground. So you can include ground test flights. Well, test flights can be included onto a ground risk, but it is subject to our underwriting and also might also be subject to an additional deductible. And then also you can include ground run-ups, because obviously if you are traveling quite a lot as an aircraft owner and you have a beautiful aircraft and she is a hangar queen just standing there, not operating quite often, you are going to have someone start up the engine, have a look at the aircraft, see what's going on, because otherwise it can result in a lot of maintenance, and obviously the price of that would also increase phenomenally. Now, the most important cover for any aircraft whilst it's in the air is all risk cover. This is cover afforded for any aircraft whilst on the flight, and it's almost an umbrella type of product because it also covers everything on the ground too. So this is your most comprehensive product when looking at an aircraft. Obviously, we also have our liability. Liability would be loaded and also included on an aviation policy at an additional premium now. So third-party legal liability is basically any cover that's afforded to a person where the insured aircraft has damaged, let's say, crops or a house or anything that our insured aircraft has gone down into. And this is normally when it refers to an accident or an incident, you'll probably sit with a third-party claim. And this just protects the owner from unnecessary amounts reaping up for a claim now. The same goes hand in hand for passenger legal liability, because passenger legal liability, it's basically any time you embark or disembark an aircraft and whilst you are on the aircraft. So whatever happens to you on our insured aircraft, majority of the times you would be quite amazed by the claims you'd see, if whether it is a cabin attendant taking her trolley or his trolley down the aisle, pushing it into someone's knee, that is obviously, it will trigger this part of the policy. Now, we do not underwrite the policy that you have an X limit and another limit for third party and passenger separately. We refer to a combined single limit. And this combined single limit is one limit afforded to the client and can be split into both products then from there. So this is our basics of an aviation policy, and moving on to the dreaded part, but also the good part, is war. So obviously war and instability, as Justin has mentioned, we had quite a few wars across the world in the few recent years. But now, how does this translate into aviation? How does it have an impact on aviation insurance? The thing is, with aviation insurance, if you look at any aircraft operating into these countries, it's either a crucial flight to rescue or repatriate any person, or it can also be to deliver supplies. Now, what happens is most of these are humanitarian flights, and these operators take out a phenomenal loan or, let's say, a finance agreement to finance these aircraft. Obviously, they are also going to require war cover when it comes to flying into, let's say, Sudan as an example now. These flights are very important for supplies, for medicinal uses, for majority of the things, cargo and passengers. And that's where we move into our whole war risk section. So our war risk section is any cover afforded for intentional damage done to an aircraft, whether an aircraft was shot at, whether it was bombed. This is the section of the policy that will cover you for that. And this is the most important part when operating to these countries. So if you take into consideration, if we are flying from from an origin to a destination, this is a gateway from one country into the other country. Now, it's not just us as insurers or citizens of a country that regards these airfields or airports as gateways. Terrorists do too. So that increases the risk for this whole war policy itself, because whether it's going to be standing in this country on an airfield without security, or whether it is one of your bigger airports, we can take Khartoum as an example. These terrorists are going to attack these airports because obviously they are trying to get the power into their hands. They are trying to control everything going on. So that increases our risk and also the reinsurance risk when it comes to aircraft. Now, obviously, there has been a massive increase on war rates. And this is the premium loaded onto any whole war risk cover afforded. And this is due to the bombings at Khartoum Airport, Israel, and also Russia-Ukraine situation. I mean, the amount of claims that have gone through and unprocessed claims also that are still pending is just, it's on another level. And I can say that it is just above $1 billion, if not even more than that. So This is very important cover for anyone. And just if you would like to mention anything on war risk.
Lorenzi, I think you've done a good job there, so I'm happy that you continue, but thank you and going well so far. So good stuff.
Great. So with that aside, we can always go ahead and look at discounts. So don't we all love discounts? And this is something that's very nice and also embedded into an aviation policy. We have two types of no-claim bonuses on an aviation policy. And normally we would refer to a upfront no-claim bonus, which is granted at the inception of the policy. And it is seen as a discount on the annual premium for the client. So obviously a lesser amount to pay on your premium, which is a great thing. Normally you would see this is the more popular upfront no-claim bonus loaded onto an aviation policy. But we also get the second one where it is a no-claim bonus on renewal, which we also call an earned no-claim bonus. This one is basically afforded to the client on the renewal premium. So now what happens is discounts are nice, and we all love them, but we also have to look after ourselves, although it might sound a bit selfish. So in the instance of an upfront no-claim bonus being afforded, this no-claim bonus will be paid back to the insurer in the event of any loss. That is basically just us guaranteeing and also loading some responsibility on aircraft owners and policyholders to adhere to civil aviation regulations and rules, and also just practice good airmanship at the end of the day. And in the case of an earned no-claim bonus, we would look at the renewal conditions. You would have to renew with the same insurer, and you would also have to be loss-free for your previous policy period in order for us to afford you this discount on your renewal premium. So when we say you have conditions, as I referred to hull all risk and ground risk, you also can call it full flight risks and ground risks. If you do renew on full flight and you have been on full flight for the past 12 months, no claims, then that is money in your pocket, discounted from your premium. Nothing to worry about for the next year or the renewal period. There is no such clause as with the upfront no claim bonus that it becomes payable back. You've earned that. So that is basically our no claim bonuses and the discount we can provide clients on aviation policies. Now, the claims process, although we do understand that majority of aircraft accidents are on the more severe, and I don't really want to say this, but fatal side. But if there is a client and you have insurance, please inform this client to call you as soon as possible. And also when this client's in a safe area and has the opportunity to inform the broker that something occurred. The problem with this is the broker has to inform us as quick as possible so that we can have an assessor appointed to go to the accident site and inspect the wreckage. It has happened with aviation policies that an aircraft or a wreckage was lying in a field for quite some time. And obviously, if it was, let's say, a 50% loss, nature can also take its toll on this aircraft and increase the loss on that aircraft. So it's always advisable just to contact everyone as soon as possible. So now, as soon as the assessor has been appointed, we would get the most appropriate repairer to go out, recover the wreck. And what they would do is, where the AMO, which we call an aircraft maintenance organization, they would mostly have the aircraft recovered from the accident site by the most economical means to their hangar at an airfield. And that's where they would just unload their expertise and their knowledge onto this wreck and try and get it back into a pristine condition as the client had it, and if it is possible. Now, what they are going to do is they are going to draft a cost estimate for us on a quotation. This is something we are going to look at. And obviously, if we take everything into consideration, that there was no breach of the policy conditions or any air laws, then we would get down to the point of settling on the claim amount. And after considering some information, we would probably pay that amount also back to the client, taking into consideration certain deductibles and also the premium that's outstanding. So something to inform on an aviation policy. Standard operating procedure for us on any aviation policy would be full premium in the event of a loss. So if you are selling this policy to your clients, that is something that will also be included in our policy wording and on the schedule. But if something goes wrong and there is a loss, we would most probably load on the full premium outstanding for the rest of the policy period. And that policy period being 12 months now, actually. So, and just as that's from my side. I've covered majority of the aspects. I think we are going to sit with the Q&A, which we can refer back to the slides then. But thank you so much for your time, everyone. I greatly appreciate it. And off to you.
Great stuff, Lorenzo, and great, because I see some questions coming up. So let's take some time for questions. And I'm going to start with a really interesting question, Lorenzo. But this one comes from George Parrott. So thanks, George. Great to have you listening. But Lorenzo, we spoke in the beginning of the session about, you know, the war in Russia and the impact that's had on the market. Can you describe exactly what's happened in Russia with all of those planes that have been kept there, and the owners and financiers have lost their assets and money? Do insurers bank on the war clause, or do the financiers have recourse against the insurer? So do you want to just describe the situation in Russia and how it's unfolding? Because it's, you know, my understanding is it's far from resolved, but really great topic. Thanks, Lorenzo.
Definitely. So this is a very interesting one, and there's actually two aspects to explain on this and what's occurring in Russia right now. So the thing is, with your normal aviation policy, exclusion of confiscation by the government of registry. So that's a massive sentence, but basically the country where the aircraft is registered, you are not covered for the confiscation by that country. But now working back into our war section of our policy, you are covered for any foreign country and confiscation thereof. So this was a massive leasing company, and I just can't get to their name right now. But these aircraft operated into Russia. Obviously, Russia decided to bomb Ukraine and also start a war now. And basically written back, Russia has decided to confiscate all these aircraft. So now, and have them re-registered also to local companies within Russia, and also registered onto the Russian register. So now what happens is, this is something where they are fighting whether the confiscation is going to be paid by insurers. And last time I've checked, this is still going on. The last update I've seen was in October last year. But it basically comes down to the confiscation of aircraft by a foreign country or foreign government. I hope that answers it as asked.
Yes, and to add to that, I mean, the real answer right now is that this case is going to court. There's a lot of dispute whether this is covered under the hull or the war. So I don't think there's really much of a dispute that it won't be covered, but in global markets, hull and war is often covered by different reinsurers. So this is going to court at the moment, and then there will obviously be a ruling, and then the insurance market will respond. What we do know is that this is literally billions of dollars of risk, and depending on the outcome, it will certainly have a big impact on the aviation insurance market, and we've seen that impact already. So thanks very much, George, for that question. We have a question from Corin Pretorius. Lorenzo, maybe you want to just talk about two things. Do you want to talk a bit about our capacity, and I can jump in there if you want? And also, what are some of the main exceptions or exclusions that we exclude under just a standard aviation policy? I trust that answers your question, Corin, but welcome to chat more if you want more detail. Let's start with some of the main exceptions and exclusions, Lorenzo.
Okay, so referring to the exclusions, I'm going to go back to the underwriting and our appetite. So the exclusions we're not, well, we are imposing on aviation policies right now would be looking into the agricultural uses side of a policy, and also the, as I said, training, and then majority of the times game work too. So for now, because we've started and we've just gotten into the aviation industry too, we are trying to take it on a conservative and a sustainable approach. And these are more of your higher risks when it comes to crop spraying and cloud seeding. Game work normally comes down to culling, darting, surveying. It's low-level flights. It's you know, the risk associated with that is phenomenally high. So for now, that is what we will be excluding. But I think your question was more aimed at what exclusions we actually have on the policy. So now, because we are still in our policy wording draft phase, I am happy to share this with you over email as soon as we have our policy wording and we finalize our exclusions too. But exclusions would come down to geographical limits, certain countries that we cannot write, and also certain countries that we don't feel comfortable with writing right now. That'll also be stated in our policy wording. So also referring to our appetite and our criteria is also our limits. Now, it's important to chat what we can look at right now and what's a bit out of our reach. So our treaty is based on $1 million on the hull itself. So we can write anything up to $1 million, and this is for any one aircraft or incident. Now, on the liability side, we have $2 million. Now, you have to understand that this is a general aviation quota share treaty. So we understand for the South African local market, this does provide enough cover for any aircraft operating privately or perhaps commercially also in South Africa. It has been fixed to 20 million Rand for the hull and also 40 million Rand for the liabilities. But obviously, as Justin has also stated now in our previous slides, that we have been seeing approaches from Africa, outside South Africa, where we see legal liability limits reaching up to $50 million, and it could even go higher than $100 million. So we do understand also the need for higher liability limits, and also have put together our negotiations and our points to this when we are going to go to our treaty renewal, so that we can see if we can secure additional capacity for that too, to accommodate more risks. I hope that answers it, Just.
Yeah, that does. So in summary, we write up to $1 million or 20 million Rand for any hull, and $2 million or 40 million Rand for liability. I'll also say that we're not putting down this capacity on every single risk. We are acting as a follow market, and we want to build up, as I've mentioned, a sustainable book of business. And that's why in time, as Lorenzo mentioned, we'll look to increase our capacities, but we think this is a really good start and allows us to participate on most risks that we see. Lorenzo, then we have another question from an anonymous attendee. So I'm guessing this is from a broker, but he said, in the case of a claim with an upfront discount and the client needs to pay the balance, will the broker earn the standard commission on that balance? So does the broker earn the commission on the additional premium paid in terms of no claim discount?
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So the premium, the brokerage itself is loaded on the annual premium, and that's after the no claim bonus. So that would not be taken into regard.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question, Lorenzo, from Nadia Shiba, who's our own iTOO claims expert. And Nadia, of course, being a claims expert, has given you a difficult one. So Lorenzo, let's test if you really are an expert and if you know this market. But are there any stats on the number of private aircraft owners in South Africa? She says in 2017, according to a New Wealth report, it was in the region of 2,150 private aircrafts. So Lorenzo, let's test your expert knowledge. How many private aircrafts are there owned in South Africa?
So as I previously mentioned, we were close to about 20,000 airplanes, or aircraft itself. So the last time I did a study was also actually in 2018, where I got to the figure of 16,000. Now, taken into consideration, you do have type and non-type certified aircraft. So it depends on what has been calculated there. If you're only looking at type certified aircraft, which sounds like the actual number there, is because of the recent export amounts going out of South Africa. Due to, as Justin, you've also said, we do work with dollar-based assets. And obviously the strength, or I won't say the weakness of our rates of exchange and our currency, we are seeing a lot of our type certified aircraft being exported out of South Africa. So that might really be taken into account for type certified aircraft up to the figure of about 2,100. But the last time I checked, quite a few years ago, we were just above 15,000 aircraft flying in South Africa. That includes helicopters, commercial aircraft, private aircraft. If I had to put my figure with it now, I would probably say we're sitting too close to about 4,000 to 5,000 Rand, 5,000 private aircraft.
Thank you, Lorenzo, and thank you for the question, Nadia. We've got quite a few more questions on the chat, and this is what I find about these iTOOsdays, is a lot of the learning comes out from all of you asking your questions, and then Lorenzo, our expert, sharing some of his views and insights. So please stay on the line if you're interested. We've got about 5 more minutes left. And we have a number of quite cool questions coming in where we're going to put Lorenzo to the test and see how he does. So, Lorenzo, we have a question here from Suzanne Carter. Repairs and maintenance liability, is that offered for clients that operate on third-party aircraft? So I guess she's asking there about third-party liability and repairs and maintenance liability for someone that's working on aircraft. Lorenzo, maybe let me answer that one quickly, because I think I can answer that fairly quickly. And really the answer to that is there is such a thing as this sort of standalone aviation liability. Currently, as it stands, we're not offering this as a cover. But as we grow our business and we build up our liability combined with the actual hull, we will be looking to get into some of the standalone liability and specialist aviation liabilities that are standalone. So Suzanne, keep with us, keep a relationship, and I'm pretty sure in the future we'll be able to discuss these types of risks. Lorenzo, let's have another question for you. I think this is the same from Wally Jacobs. Will you be offering the market for airside liability? And I think that's the same question as we've answered there. So currently we're not writing standalone airside liability, but it's certainly something that we are looking at. And then hull and liabilities, we have asked that as well.
Justin, if I may quickly jump in there, it's just so the policy I think I'm hearing the most here is the aerodrome operators and owners policy. So that is PPH, product premises and hangars keepers. As Justin has mentioned, we would look into that section, obviously with meticulous underwriting, but as soon as we do have our license issued. Sorry, just to quickly inform everyone on the policy's name itself, but yes, that is it, AO&O.
Sure, and then Jeremy Wright. So Jeremy, great to hear from you and good to have you on this call. Lorenzo, I'm going to hand this one over to you, but will I2 insure ZU registration aircrafts? Do you have a view on that?
Yes, definitely. So ZU, non-type certified aircraft, we would definitely look at insuring those aircraft. It was actually, if I can give a brief 1-minute story about our background with our treaty, we did go through quite a few emails explaining the difference between experimental aircraft and non-type certified aircraft. Because the problem is every non-type certified aircraft does have a label in its logbook, flight folio book, or inside the cockpit itself that states experimental. So trying to explain experimental aircraft to someone in comparison to factory built aircraft is quite a tedious matter, but we have secured our inclusion for experimental aircraft, and that would count for ZU non-type certified in South Africa, from Sling to Vans, RVs, Jabiroos, Savannahs, Kit Foxes. As we said, we are keen to look at anything.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Thanks for the questions. So there's two more sort of questions, and then I think we're going to wrap up because it's 5 minutes to 10. Shelley, thank you for your comment. Shelley lives at the Vaal River, and she's saying they're using drones and crop sprayers to spray the massive blanket of water lettuce that's growing in the Vaal River. So she's really empowered that I2 are insuring drones and aviation risks. And Shelley, yes, this is one great example of how drones, as we mentioned earlier, are being used in many different ways. So I'm glad that I2 is part of the solution to many of these types of developments in the drone market. Then, Lorenzo, we have a question around from Sandra McClung. So Sandra, thank you for your question. And she's saying, would aircraft and drones based in neighboring countries be underwritten by I2 in South Africa, or by an agency or broker in that particular country in Africa? So Lorenzo, I don't know if you want to answer that, and I can certainly add to that
Most
question.
Definitely. So most of the underwriting would come back to us, obviously referring to Hollard and our stance in Africa. It makes it easier for us to get the actual business here, underwrite it, and also control it from there, which would then obviously be on a fact basis or a reinsurance basis back to South Africa. We would be in control of the underwriting, the claims, basically the collection on it, or any endorsements or such. Yes, I too would definitely be in control of that. Justin, if you'd like to add anything on our presence in Africa and the neighboring countries?
Yes, so Sandra, I am just to add to Lorenzo's answer, he's correct. But with our relationship with Hollard, I2 does have a license and a person on the ground in Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, Mozambique, so all of the surrounding countries surrounding South Africa, and we have licenses there. So we also are able to use our local licenses in country to issue a local policy, and that obviously is an important part of complying with the legislation. And I think that's something really unique that we bring to the party. Okay, we're nearly done, and then we'll wrap it up soon. So Jeanette, do you have standard templates that you'll be sharing with brokers, or can we send you requests on our own request templates. So Jeanette, I have put Lorenzio's details on this chat. So I suggest you send him an email and we'll send you any questions that he have, that any templates that we have, and we'd love to start looking at you. Jeanette, you have asked about Nigerian domiciled risks. Lorenzio, I don't know if you want to comment on that as well before we wrap up.
Yes. Sorry, Justin, you just cut out there. I did not hear the country.
So Jeanette was asking if we will cover Nigerian-based risks and domiciled risks.
Okay, fantastic. So, hi, Jeanette, and a very valid question, because this has also taken some negotiations, but at this point in time, we do cover aircraft that are domiciled outside Nigeria for any damage happening inside Nigeria. We have also included, as you would know, there is a geographics exclusion clause, LSW 617, where Nigeria is excluded. Now we've basically got an opportunity to write Nigeria domiciled business on a referral basis. So it is the best way we can protect our interest and the reinsurer's interest too. So whatever request we do receive with domiciled risk there, we'll send it on to our reinsurers. As soon as we get slip leader approval on that, then we'll get back to you. So that quote might take a bit longer than the normal local quote.
And Jeanette, just to add to that, as we've said, you know, we're building a business from South Africa. We're really keen on going into Africa, a country that's like Nigeria, that is new and maybe relatively unknown to us. We would certainly be more cautious to start, but we're really happy to engage with you and understand your client and their risks, and let's see what we can do. So on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank Lorenzio for joining us as our I2 aviation expert, and thanks for joining. And as we said, the main message is I2 Aviation is open for business. Lorenzio's details are on the chat, so he'd love to hear from you. We're hoping we're going to get in touch with you, and let's do some business, and let's build a long and sustainable partnership with all of you together. So thank you so much for joining. Go out and have a good Tuesday. And a last reminder, next Thursday is the I2 Unconference at I2's offices. So if you haven't got an email invite on our mailing list, please reach out to us, and we'd love to have you at our I2 Unconference next Thursday for most of the day. A great session of different presentations and speakers, and of course, the famous I2 gin bar and drinks afterwards. Thank you very much. Hope to see you at the I2 Unconference.